How's it going, YouTube? Commenting today with another video, and today, guys, what the brand new is Nats preparation. Now, with Nats this weekend, I really want to make sure that everyone remembers where to hand trap, so we're going to be going over some reminders. We're also going to be talking a lot about sideboarding and then general counterplay for the format, because I feel like there's just so much to discuss since there's so many different decks in the format that I want to make sure that you are as prepared as possible. So if you haven't already checked out my sponsors over at Imperium Duelist and Dragon Shield, definitely go ahead and check them out, and without further ado, let's hop right on into the video. So the first card that I want to talk about today is going to be Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. This is a card that really fell off after the Brave Engine fell off, but now that we're seeing a bit more Brave Engine with the Punk Therian deck, we're seeing it with the Punk Adventure deck, and even in the Dragon deck, I really just want to say that this card is really going to do work this weekend. I think it's going to be very unexpected. Also hitting things like boot sectors, even again just going after like the Fateful Adventure, hitting the ABC Union Hanger. I think that that's going to be crazy too. There's just so much opportunity for Ghost Ogre to be good this format that I really do think that this is going to be a really nice tech card for this weekend, because I feel like there's just so many people that just aren't playing it that I think that if you are, this might give you a slight edge this weekend. The next thing that I want to talk about is going to be Stop Ashing Enchantress. There is so many different decks right now on Gamma. Like, I would say at least 5 decks currently are running Gamma in the main deck. Really wanting to not get punished by that, so definitely go ahead and just ash the Fateful Adventure. You get way less punished by them opening up the Griffin than you do by getting hit by Gamma, because Gamma revealed on their turn usually means that you're losing that duel. So definitely 110% just ash the Fateful Adventure. Do not ash the Enchantress, because then you also get punished if they hard open the right too. So there's quite a few things that I just wouldn't want to see you waste the ash on, especially because Hulk is really important to get to. If the combo goes from Hulk into Red Rose into Griffin, it's going to be a bad time. So 110% just ash Fateful Adventure. Do not ash Enchantress. So talking about a couple decks here, not a lot, but just a couple decks, just as a reminder. The first one I want to bring up to you is going to be Dragon Link. Now, if you had the opportunity to go ahead and negate the Hulk, I definitely recommend to go ahead and do that. Many decks right now are leaning on Hulk as a really solid engine piece to get them into the Red Rose. So definitely go ahead and Ash Veiler Imperm the Hulk as soon as you can. It's just going to be way better off for you and not letting your opponent get to absolute full combo. The next one is if you are playing Ghost Ogre, hitting the boot sector is super impactful. It's just such a nice soul charge for the deck. Also, just more ways to Tracer, and that just means that more ways to combo. So definitely go ahead and get rid of boot sector as soon as possible. Also, in Dragon Link, if you have the Imperm, I would just hold it for Borland. Or if you have the Imperm, just know that most Dragon lists right now are playing Appaloosa. So holding Imperm potentially for that is also just a really nice counterplay. Because you also have a lot of people who hold like Nibiru for like the Borland, and then an Appaloosa hits the board. A lot of Dragon Link players aren't just summoning Borland turn 1 anymore because it's just incorrect. So they'll go like Appaloosa or like Seals or something else. So just really try to avoid using your Imperm early if you don't have to. But even if the Hulk comes down, I definitely recommend if you only have Imperm to just go ahead and Imperm the Hulk. But just 110% just realize that Borland just straight up loses to Imperm. Also the Appaloosa. And those are both very real in the deck. The next one here that I want to talk about is going to be if you have combinations of hand traps like Ash and Nibiru in your hand against Dragon Link, is if you have the opportunity to open up these two and it isn't like an Imperm or a Veiler, you typically want to just go ahead and Ash the Hulk, which will prompt the Griffin there almost always, because they really need the Red Rose to hit the board in Dragon Link. So then you can go ahead and chain Nibiru straight after that. And I think this is just the best time to do it, because again, about Appaloosa being in the deck now, you really want to make sure that you're not just like using the rock too late and then getting hit by the Appaloosa. And this is just very important to note here. So the next deck I want to talk about is one that I've been getting asked about quite a bit, and that's going to be Marincess. How do we stop Marincess? So using Ghost Ogre on the field spell, very important. The field spell is what makes the monster become a towers. Otherwise, I don't really feel like the deck is that good. They have like a really bad Heat Leo, and then there's also like the spell and trap negation. But if you just go ahead and stop the Battle Ocean, even if you don't have Ghost Ogre, if you're just in combo and like you just get rid of Battle Ocean, their whole combo just doesn't matter. The other thing too is you really have to negate the Sea Angel, because the dive, which is the reborn spell, is really important to their combo, especially if they don't open optimally. You really just want to make sure that you shut down the Sea Angel, because that's another way for them to get to Battle Ocean as well. So this is probably one of the most impactful hits. If you have double hand traps, you can like Ash Sea Angel and then negate the Link 2. I think it's the anime. That one's really important to stop the reborn. As for Punk Synchro, I just wanted to do another reminder on this too, is just really stopping the Hulk in most of these decks is just extremely important. I cannot stress that enough, because of the fact that Hulk is just able to net so much advantage, and then also if you hold the Imperm for your turn to negate the Hulk, then they can't get to TG to pop their own Scythe as well. Also, just ashing the Foxy Tune. You can ash the Amin, but I'd rather just ash the Foxy Tune most times than not. I think that is just more impactful. But either or is typically fine, just making sure that you don't allow them to go full combo, right? The other thing, like I said before, Ghost Ogre on the Union Hanger, just going to be super impactful. And this is another thing where I just really think that Ghost Ogre is really good this format, because it just has so much versatility, and I really like that. So as for Despia, this is another one that I've been getting asked about a lot, just as a reminder. So you can go ahead and Crow the branded and red target. You can Ash the branded fusion, and then you can Imperm or Veiler the Aluber. If they summon it off branded opening in the draw phase, then of course you can only Imperm it, but otherwise definitely go ahead and just Veiler it when you can. I think that the Aluber is still correct to negate here, just because you really don't want your opponent to get the things like Lost. So this is just going to be the most optimal spot to Handtrap. The next thing that I want to talk about is Drytron. This is a deck that we're going to see. This is a deck that does main deck Dark Ruler and sides Mystic Mine. So make sure that you do not get caught off guard by this weekend. Definitely go ahead and sideboard in things like Twin or Cosmic game 2 and 3, just because you really don't want to lose to things like Mystic Mine. It's not going to be very fun, and I definitely recommend that you have those cards in there, because this deck absolutely will be putting in Mystic Mine game 2 and 3. The next thing is watch out for these sideboard cards. I think these are very impactful this weekend, especially Eradicator. If you're not familiar, there's many decks right now on Eradicator, like Dragon, like Despia. This card is insane. Being able to call spell or trap against your opponent, it's almost always just a blowout. Also, using cards like Anti-Spell and D-Barrier, these are very common. A lot of times you'll see in the big combo decks that they'll end their combo by setting one. Usually it's like Anti-Spell, and then the other decks are just playing the D-Barriers. These are both very impactful as well, and these are things that you should just generally be aware of as far as when you're going into your games 2 and 3, that these are probably going to be very real threats. So the next underrated play that I want to talk about is going to be IP into Access Code. This plays around things like the Miser Land if you're afraid of that, or if you're really just not wanting to play against like the Eldritch matchup. They don't really have a lot of removal outside of using things like Conch. So on your turn, if you set up things like IP and then you can go into Access Code, a lot of times it's really impactful. I actually did this at my last OTS tournament that I went to. I was against Mindburn. I made IP, and then I went into Access Code. Then I was able to pop 2 cards on their board, pop double Demise to the land, and then went for game. So I think this is just really cool. This was something at the tournament that I thought was really insane. So just something that I wanted to note, that if you are in a really awkward situation, sometimes going IP into an Access Code that can't be killed by card effects is really insane. And this is something that I feel like, again, is just one of those underrated plays that can really help you out in certain matchups. So thinking about sideboarding, I just want to talk about this for a minute, because I feel like sideboarding right now is more important than ever, and it's really hard to really determine what to sideboard and what matchups you're really afraid of. There's so many different decks in the format right now. Like if you look at even Marincess, right? That's a deck where it might not be that scary to verse, but if you don't have the correct out for like the Battle Ocean to deal with the towers, it can get pretty daunting to deal with, especially if you don't have anything that's that big to swing over their monster. So also talking about things like Scythe, what are your outs for Scythe? Are you afraid of Scythe? Do you have enough in your sideboard to really be able to out that? I personally really think that the Artifact Sanctum Scythe package in the sideboard is really strong right now, and a lot of people just really aren't utilizing that, so I definitely recommend going ahead and doing that. I think that it's really smart at the moment. It's something that can really catch a lot of people off guard, especially if you're just playing like Striker or what have you. Especially like a lot of people are talking to me about if you play Striker this weekend, like do you go first or second? I personally think that you just go first and play some Floodgates, like there can be only one. And then post side, then you're going to be going into your chainables rather than just the ones that are like mines or other Floodgates, because I feel like if you ever play a deck like Striker or a control deck that people are already siding Becker out for, you don't put in the actual floodgates, then you just switch over to things like Silent Graveyard, D-Barrier, different Dimension Ground, like those types of cards, because at that point you're not really losing anything. If they go ahead and like twin you, you can just chain your back row and then you still have the same value for it. So I think that's really important to note here. Also, talking about decks like Sorcel, do you respect the matchup enough to side Token Collector, which I think you should. I think the matchup is still very real. I think it's going to be very common at the event. So definitely go ahead and make sure that you have a solid side for decks like Sorcel. Against Dragon Link, there is a few cards that you can sideboard that are pretty okay. I think that just having the standard Droll and Lockbird, though, for that is really strong. Having the Anti-Spell is, like, okay. It's not, like, crazy, but, like, it's still pretty good. So definitely consider that, too. D-Barrier Call Synchro isn't, like, the greatest either, but it's still pretty nice because you can shut down quite a few things, but there's still so many links that you can go into in Dragon and set up like a decent board that like D-Barrier just isn't like that crazy. So having cards again like Droll and Nibiru still very strong because there's a lot of combos that just don't end with Heretic Seal anymore. So Nibiru just feels a bit better. There is the right package in the deck now, so you really have to watch out for that. But it's still really important to note there. And then as for Despia, you can side things like DD Crow for it, but I just don't know how impactful it is right now. I still recommend using cards like Super Poly on your side if you're really afraid of the deck. Or if you're going to be just playing against it a lot, then maybe you're siding or even maining D-Barrier. I think that it's going to be pretty common at the event, but I don't think it's going to be like the biggest deck in the room. Also, if you're playing against things like Drytron, I really do feel like Droll and Lockbird is just really sufficient against that deck. And then, again, it's just one of those decks that you also just want to rock too. So if you have Nibiru on your side, that's equally very good. As far as like Dim Barrier, I probably wouldn't side it for them. If you have things like different Dimension Ground, though, I think that's a really solid card. There's just so many different options that you can sideboard this format that, especially cards like Eradicator, I think that that's really strong right now, so definitely consider having that too. But I hope that this video did help for the preparation of this weekend, because I feel like there's just so many different decks to talk about right now that this is a video I really wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same playing field and that we all had a really nice idea of what to do and how to prepare for this event. Because again, there's just so many different decks to worry about. So I think it's going to be a good event though. I think it's going to be a solid event. And I'm really excited to be able to play this weekend, honestly. So I hope that everyone has a wonderful night. I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.